What's up, everybody? One Fun Guy podcast in the studio, just hanging out. Happy Halloween to everybody. Hope everybody's doing well tonight. I have my podcast going live with Cal in about 10 minutes, give or take. So I just wanted to say what's up and share this out to a couple people real quick, see what we got going on, and then we'll go from there. So hopefully everybody is doing okay today, that everybody's feeling good on this Halloween. Everyone had a good, fun, safe Halloween. That's always the point of this, is to, be safe and to, be fun and hang out and do the things. So, if you're doing it, that's awesome. I hope everybody is enjoying themselves, and, that you had fun with everything going on, that we're What's up, Sylvia? Yeah, right. It's Halloween. You got to do the mask and do the stuff. So, it's just the thing. So we're just having some fun, right? It's no big deal. Um, I'm just texting Cal right away. Thank you all for hopping on and being a part of this, guys. Thank you for all the love and support and all the likes, guys. I really appreciate it. It means the world to me. You guys know that. You know, uh, but I'll take the mask off and do my normal thing, guys, right? So we will just hang out tonight, guys. Thanks for hopping on. You don't have to stay on long. I appreciate it. All the love and support, guys. Thank you, Sylvia. Obviously, you're an OG, so thank you. And everybody who's new, I'm the One Fun Guy podcast. My buddy Kel, we get together and we do this thing called the Pod Cult, where we talk about hard rock and heavy metal in our daily lives, music, likes, dislikes, things that we enjoy, things that we have going on. I'm going to drop my camera just a tad here. But yeah, so other than that, guys, that's pretty much it. We do a show once a week where we just kind of talk about what we like in the music business, and bands that we like, things that we do. So we just have fun with it, guys. So that's it. Avenged Sevenfold is awesome. So you know, obviously, Jamie, we talk hard rock and heavy metal. Avenged is fantastic. They're really cool. They're a great band. Everybody has their own taste in music and what they feel is, good. If you're joining, say hi, tell us where you're from, or at least me anyways. Kel will be on in a little bit here. We're going to talk about some interesting stuff and go from there. So we have a good show coming up for tonight. My podcast this week is going to be on Sunday with Beth, if she's ready. If not, we'll figure out something. But I just wish her all the best and well wishes. Hopefully she's able to do it. If not, we'll figure out something else. But we're just kind of hanging out and go from there. Miss Cosplay, what's going on? So yeah, if you guys are here, I'm live, guys. This is me. I'm the One Fun Guy podcast. So just me. What's up? So yeah, so we're just hanging out, guys, having a good time tonight. Me and Kel are going to be talking music in a little bit here. We got just kind of a fun show lined up, and then we're going to just kind of see where the night takes us. It's Halloween, guys, so happy Halloween. If you guys caught me earlier, I had my mask on, but I took it off. Obviously, I'm a horror movie buff, so this is, my season, and now it goes into the holiday season. So that's kind of weird, right? That it goes from literally Christmas to basically, or Halloween to Christmas, right? Everyone kind of forgets about Thanksgiving, but tomorrow all the Halloween stuff will be half off, and every shelf will be lined with Christmas stuff. So that's just kind of how it is. Miss Cosplay, what's going on? What'd you guys dress up as for Halloween? Did anybody wear a costume today? Put something on? Maybe do something a little bit different with some makeup? Or, maybe I know some girls that normally wear normal makeup. Today they kind of go black or purple instead of like the reds and pinks. So they go a little bit dark. Guys, did you do anything? Wear anything special? Even maybe a set of horns or, something that you would have normally not have done that you would have, made it a Halloween spectacular. I loved Halloween as a kid. It was one of my favorite holidays. I loved dressing up. I loved everything about it. It was great. I had some really great costumes as a kid. Just being, in the spirit of dressing up and being something different. So you were dressed as a Waluigi. So that's the female Luigi, right? I think that's what that is from Mario, right? That's that. I'm not big on the characters, right? I like the Michael Myers and the all the other stuff. I would open my cabinets, but I have that. So for Mario, right? I was right. But anyways, guys, I have all the horror movies in my cabinet. I've watched hundreds this month. Literally every night I tried to catch one. Big Daddy, what's up, Seth? Long time no see, my friend. But yeah, so it was awesome. And then I found these shorts on YouTube, these horror movie shorts that are about 7 to 10 minutes long. They are absolutely incredible. If you YouTube horror movie shorts on YouTube, you will see some of the scariest, spookiest, creepiest things ever. It is awesome. I highly recommend them. Do not watch them alone at night in the dark. Honestly, it will creep you out. Some of these people that do these shorts are phenomenal, right? The actors they get, the way they think about it. Obviously, they're not movies. They're about 10 minutes long, but they tell a fascinating story in that amount of time. Incredible. One I watched was The Chair, creepy as hell. It was awesome. I loved it. It was just kind of a weird time travel thing. It was really kind of really neat the way that they did it. And it was just some, regular people. So, Nicole, thank you for the follow. I will follow you back, guys. And I should mention that, right, guys? If you're new to me, follow me and I'll follow you back. We'll interact. We'll engage with each other. We'll talk. If you have any, interest in being on my podcast, let me know. Shoot me a message. We'll make that happen. I talk about everything from sports to music to movies to wrestling to music to poetry to comic books to, you name it, I've pretty much covered it. I've been doing some more mental health stuff with the last few guests I've had. So we've just kind of been hanging out and doing that. But if you're new to my podcast, guys, it's in my bio. It's One Fun Guy Podcast on YouTube. If you just type in One Fun Guy Podcast, you'll find me. If you subscribe to my channel, that would be awesome. Thank you guys for all the love and support, guys, all the likes. I always say, guys, I don't ask you to come in and touch my face or tap my nose or touch the screen. If you do it, I appreciate it. It means a lot to me, but it's not a requirement to hang out in my live. And again, guys, if you send me gifts, I deeply, deeply appreciate it. But I would rather you spend your money on people that actually want to collect gifts and move up in the TikTok world. It's not me. I use this platform to elevate my podcast. If I make anything, I usually just gift it out to other TikTokers, right? People that are asking for money or my friends that go into live battles and things like that. That's generally what I do in terms of trying to support them. Sugar, what's up? Thank you so much for the likes and all the love, guys. But that's what I do. I don't really use it as leverage for myself monetarily. I just use it as basically gifts to other people that really want to make TikTok, their livelihood or try to make it big, right? Or catch a break. I just don't feel the need to necessarily do that. For me personally, I don't think that it's a goal of mine to be like TikTok famous. I'd rather be YouTube famous. I'd rather have the subscribers on YouTube and make it consistent. And, eventually TikTok will turn into my networking platform. and it would be great, but it's not what I want to do. YouTube is where I want to be. So YouTube is what I want to make monetarily on, right? I'd want to get, 1,000 subscribers. My YouTube name is One Fun Guy Podcast. The link is in my bio, but it's One Fun Guy Podcast. If you just go to YouTube and type it in, I'll pop up. I'll show you guys real quick. My logo, if you guys can see it, this is my account, guys. So One Fun Guy Podcast. I know it's backwards, but One Fun Guy Podcast. So one_fun_guy_podcast. This is my YouTube channel, guys. And everything that I do on my YouTube channel, guys, will live in infamy. I don't take anything out. I don't delete anything. I add everything I do. This live will be up there, so you guys can see all your comments and stuff on my YouTube video. I will post it tonight. It takes about an hour and a half to download and upload to YouTube. But everything I've ever done via YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, or Instagram is all on my YouTube channel. I don't hide anything. It's like a journal of where I've been and where I want to go. So for me, it's awesome. I love doing the podcast. I love meeting people. I like talking to people. So if you want to be a guest on my podcast, or you think you know somebody who might make a good guest, let me know. I'd love to have them on. I'm always looking to expand. I started my podcast in January of this year. And so far I'm on 36 episodes. Kel, what's going on? Hop on in, whenever you're ready. No rush. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with that. That's where my headspace is. And me and Kel have a podcast. We call it the Pod Cult, where we talk about, music, basically hard rock and heavy metal, but we touch on everything, right? Some classic rock, some funk, some, we're not limited to just the hard rock and heavy metal. That's our base, because that's what we like. But we talk about other things too. So he'll be on with me in about probably a couple minutes here. And when he hops on, you'll see what we do together, and I'll need an invite. So let me do that here. Let's see where he is. That's bizarre. Kel, it says you're not on live. I'm trying to find you and I cannot do it. Hold on, let me see if this is alphabetical here or not. Bear with me, guys, 1 second. Trying to find him. Obviously, he's one half of my show, so it's very important that I get him. He's an awesome dude. I'm so glad I met him and that we connected the way we did. It's actually really awesome. Let's see here. Let me see if I can find him. He's obviously on and live. So this is bizarre. Let me go do this real quick then. See if I can get him this way. That did not work. Let's see here. Nope, definitely don't want to do that. I just jacked everything up here. I don't know how to get back now. Let's see here. Let me do this. All right, so I found that. Can't join until after 8 because of a ban warning. No worries. I'll just stay on live. Actually, Kelly, I wanted to talk to you about something that I found interesting. So on another music website, guys, tell me if I'm wrong here. And I'd love to have your input if you're watching this. It's going to be interactive right now. One guy posted, he says, he posted about 4 bands of 90s hard rock and heavy metal bands that were underrated. One of them was what the heck? I'm gonna see if I can find it real quick. But it was very, very bizarre because I pretty much uh had this weird thing, and I posted it, and some people kind of have been commenting and stuff on it, and I want to see if I can show you the video real quick. So it was, who is the most underrated 90s bands? This was the post I was on, just so you guys have some like foundation, right? So this was live. There was a couple other bands, right? And Tasha, what's up? So he listed all these bands, right? These are just a few of them. I won't make you guys watch the entire video. So my response was Faith No More. They were one of my favorite bands, and they still are one of my favorite bands. And I thought if you're going to name a 90s hard rock or heavy metal band that was underrated, they were it, right? And my justification was that if you don't have Faith No More, you basically don't have any new metal bands. You don't have Korn, you don't have Slipknot, you don't have Rage Against the Machine, you don't have Disturbed, right? So all of this was kind of like, so I've been getting a bunch of people saying, yes, I agree. But then I've had a few people say, well, they're really an 80s metal band, right? Because what was the name of the album? It came out in '89. The one that had Epic on it. I can't think of the name right now. But A Real Thing, right? So The Real Thing came out in 1989, but all their other albums were 90s. So I was like, this is very bizarre, because it's like, I think that they are highly underrated, right? And they get their fame of what they're doing, right? Like they have all this stuff, Essential Housekeeping, what's up? But essentially what happens, right, is that I think they're the platform for all the new metal bands that happen, right? And yeah, when Mike came in, he was not their original singer, right? But his vocal range was awesome. His albums were, in my opinion, better than their original singer. Nothing wrong. He had some demons that obviously could not stay in the band anymore. They had some albums in the 80s, but they were EPs in an album, right? We Care a Lot, I think, was 88 or 87. But I feel that they were a 90s band, but I don't think they're the most underrated band, but I would have to put them as like at least the top 3 most underrated bands of the 90s, right? I would, they did reach some acclaim, right? They had some great songs, but excuse me, but all the feedback that I got from it, people seem to agree with me that Faith No More is an extremely underrated band. When you look at all the 90s bands that you think are, famous or popular, I just personally think that if you don't have Faith No More, you don't have a lot of the quote unquote new metal bands, right? They paved the way for a lot of that. So it was just interesting, and it was a unique perspective. But I was wondering, what you guys thought, like, what are some underrated bands in your opinion, right? That you think. Another one that comes to mind, even though they're not a heavy metal band by any stretch of the imagination, but like the Black Crowes seem to always get left behind, right? When you talk about like 80s and 90s albums, right? Like the Black Crowes were awesome. I think their debut album was 1990. They don't get the acclaim that they deserve very much, right? They seem to be left out of it. Most people would consider them Southern rock or, a rock band, which they definitely are. But, I would say the Black Crowes are up there, right? For what they did for rock and roll, right? They might not be considered a hard rock band or a heavy metal band, but if you're going to list a lot of those bands, like they're definitely one of them that are extremely underrated. They're kind of, another band. And then, even in their own right, when you say list your favorite 90s metal bands, right? Or your favorite 90s hard rock bands, one of mine that never really seems to make these lists is Alice in Chains. they always just seem to get left behind, right? Of the, Pearl Jams and Nirvanas and, Soundgardens and all these other bands, right? Like Alice in Chains just seems to be like one of those forgotten bands, right? That they don't just seem to make lists. And I'm not saying that the lists are important, right? Because they're all perspective and they're all personal, right? There's no official list that comes out that says, but I mean, if you're talking about like underrated bands, right? And there were a lot, right? Like Mother Love Bone, exactly, the Melvins, Mudhoney, Temple of the Dog, right? There's a lot of bands that were out there that were, I say better than Nirvana and Pearl Jam, right? I mean, if Mike Starr didn't die from Mother Love Bone, you don't have Pearl Jam. 3/4 of Mother Love Bone became Pearl Jam. So though, and it's not, like I said, it's all perspective. There's no right or wrong, right? I mean, Nirvana changed the game for what it is, right? I don't necessarily care for them. I didn't like a lot of their stuff, but I mean, you got to respect what they did, right? Like they blew that scene up. But it just seems to me that like when you talk about like 90s underrated bands, those are the ones that come to mind, right? Because when you say, give me a 90s band, in the metal community and in the hard rock community, you're going to list your Panteras and you're going to list your, any other hard rock band that you can think of. But it's like, a lot of them just flew under the radar undeservedly, right? They were great bands. They just don't seem to get the notoriety that they deserve, right? And when they do it right, and the Melvins were awesome, right? Buzz is great, and we talk about the Melvins, but they have their very close ties to Faith No More, right? They did a lot of side projects together. Mike Patton and the Melvins later signed with iPickheck Records, which is Mike Patton's record label. But the Melvins and Faith No More have very, very close ties. They've done a lot of stuff together with prospective members of the band. Like I said, they did Tomahawk together with Mike Patton and Buzz. They did, what's the other project they did together? The one where they did all the movie songs. I can't think of the name of it right now. I actually saw them live. It was awesome. With Dave Lombardo on drums, which was incredible. That was absolutely phenomenal. And now I can't think of the name of the band. It'll come to me. But anyways, it seems to me that like a lot of the bands, it just so happened that it just turned into something that I thought was really bizarre, right? That they were really kind of unique in their own perspective. But Faith No More was like the first one that came to mind. They're like, I'm not saying they're the most underrated band, but I definitely, Fantomas, thank you. But they're one of the most, underrated bands that I feel, right? As far as, musical experiences go and great songs and tone and what they did with the rap rock thing and what they did with symphonies, and Mike Patton's voice is awesome. I would put Mike Patton as a singer up against any vocalist today. I don't think there might be a better one with his range, from being able to sing melodic opera to basically screaming and growling and grunting the way he does. It's incredible. He's got an absolutely phenomenal voice. So, I mean, I don't know. I would have to say, in my opinion, if I was going to say the absolute most underrated band, I would go to Italian, right? He does the Lavage, and he did the other stuff with John Horn, I think his name was, or John Thorne or something like that. He did some awesome stuff, but at least that's my opinion, right? I would say Faith No More is probably the most underrated band of the 90s. John Zorn, yeah, I was just close. I don't know. My brain's like on haywire tonight. I don't know why, but thanks, Kelly, for backing me up. You know what I'm talking about. But yeah, he just, he did a lot of stuff with a lot of different people. He's probably one of the most, versatile singers that you can get. He can pretty much sing or play with anybody. And it's really just kind of crazy because his band members have done the same thing, right? Mike Borden has basically drummed for a lot of different bands. He was Ozzy's drummer for a little bit. He was Jerry Cantrell's drummer from Alice in Chains. He's drummed for Rob Zombie for a little bit. He came into another one, right? Helmet's another one, right? Helmet's a great band, right? That doesn't get a lot of attention. Clutch is another one. There were a lot of bands that, you could mention that really are awesome. And Helmet, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Judgment Night soundtrack, but Helmet's song on the Judgment Night soundtrack is one of the best ones there is. And if you guys don't have that soundtrack, it's probably one of my favorite soundtracks for a movie of all time. And it is just absolutely phenomenal that what they did and what they were able to do with basically taking rock bands and metal bands and mixing them with rappers and kind of creating this unique eclectic sound, which was way ahead of its time, right? And then we all know that the rap rock thing had been done with Run DMC and Aerosmith. They kind of started the trend with that, but like the Judgment Night soundtrack took it to a completely another level. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, do yourself a favor and go to Spotify or Apple Music and look at the Judgment Night soundtrack and the amount of amazing artists that are on that. And I'm not talking about just in the rock world. I'm talking about in the rap world too. KRS-One is on there. Busta Rhymes is on there. DMX is on there. Wu-Tang is on there. And I think Helmet did the Wu-Tang collaboration, which is awesome. So, yeah, I like Rage Against the Machine, right? And Pantera, when they came on the scene, right? Like, obviously they started off as a hair metal band, right? We all know that. When they got Phil as a singer, they kind of changed their style into the late 80s, early 90s, and they basically developed their own style, which is called groove metal. That's kind of where they inherited the sound. They took a basically hard version of the blues and made it into metal, right? It's very riffy, it's very heavy, but it's very ear friendly, right? They did something unique. And I think that's where Pantera gets their perspective, because they basically said, well, we're going to play loud and fast, but we're going to make it sound good. We're going to make it to where you can actually feel the music and hear the music. They're like the heavy metal version of Hendrix. I mean, that's kind of the best way to describe it. It was Helmet and Onyx. Okay. I thought they were with the Wu-Tang, but I mean, if you guys don't know the Judgment Night soundtrack, definitely do that. Look into it at least. It's a very, very cool thing. Dallas Mama, what's up? Thanks for hopping in. But yeah, so I mean, like, those were, happy Halloween, right? Happy Halloween, everybody. I said that earlier on. If you're just hopping on now and you're just in, happy Halloween. I wore my Jason mask for the first part of the show. It's a cool one because this was actually done from Friday the 13th. So if you guys can see here, it was Friday the 13th actually like made these masks off of the original one. It's styrofoam, right? And it bends, but it was modeled off the original one. It's a collector's item, and I've kept it. I've had this thing probably 25 years now, and who knows what it's worth. But yeah, this is the real Friday the 13th stamped mask. So if any of you guys were wondering, it is the real deal, and I kept it. So, but yeah, just a little bit of insight to my Halloween stuff. So hopefully you guys had a fun Halloween, that you guys dressed up and you made the most of the day, handed out some candy, maybe got some candy. I had a few pieces today, so it turned out well. Yeah, so I just kind of, wanted to just give my insight about that. I thought it was a very unique question. And I just, I chimed in and I got a lot of feedback on it. And I guess people agree with me that Faith No More is. I got a bunch of thumbs up and likes and, great suggestion and stuff like that. But I was just thought, if you guys had any other kind of thoughts on that, or if there were any bands that you like that don't get the recognition they deserve. Primus. Yeah, Primus is another one, right? They're unbelievable for what they did, for their time and place in history was awesome. They were amazing, right? I think that they are an incredible band. I mean, Primus is unbelievable. They're fantastic, right? And Jerry was a race car driver is an awesome song. My Name is Mud, as heavy as could be, right? They're awesome. Les Claypool is a goofball, but what an awesome, amazing goofball, right? Like he's an incredible musical talent. He is probably, I don't want to say the best bass player around, but he is got to be top five, right, in terms of what he can do. I mean, it's probably hard to argue right now that the best bass player alive isn't Robert Trujillo from Metallica now, and Suicidal Tendencies, Infectious Grooves, Black Label Society, and all the other bands that he's been in. I would probably say that right now he's probably the best bassist, and deservedly so. But I mean, Les Claypool is easy top five, for sure. I know the dude from Mudvayne is really good. I don't remember his name, but he's an awesome bass player. Fieldy from Korn is awesome, right? All the stuff he's done, from hard rock and heavy metal to jazz to funk to, he's awesome, right? Yeah, I mean, Green Day, right? Like they're a unique band, right? Because they basically turned post-punk into the modern era, right? Like they basically were their own category. They obviously were heavily influenced by the 70s and 80s punk band. They kind of did their own thing. They had some really hard and heavier stuff than most punk bands were used to. Green Day is really that kind of way. I would even throw, as cheesy as it sounds, Blink 182, what they did for the punk rock scene was pretty amazing. I would even go as far as to say Good Charlotte, for what they did for the rock punk thing, right? They kind of went on their own little tangent, but I mean, for having punk pop songs, they were super, super catchy, right? Like Good Charlotte stuff was really good. I mean, it's a lot of people don't like it, but you don't have to. You just got to respect it, right? I'm not a huge Green Day fan, but I respect what they did. Did Primus get bigger than they deserved? I don't think so. I don't think they get the recognition that they do deserve, right? Ellie, what's up? I just don't think they get the recognition that they deserve. I think Primus, in terms of writing songs, the way that they played musically, the way that they, meshed their tunes together and were quirky and funny. And, they kind of had the whole package in terms of, music videos and being weird and being strange, but cool. I mean, Primus, I think, doesn't get the credit they deserve. I don't think they were too big at all. I think they could have been much bigger. And again, I don't know if that's, by default, right? Some bands want rock and roll stardom. They want to be the biggest bands in the world. They want to be the most famous bands in the world. And then there's other bands that basically are happy with being, I don't want to say mediocre, but like flying under the radar, having a solid fan base that are loyal. They don't need to be multimillionaires, right? They just need to be happy. And I think that a lot of bands confuse success with what they think the appeal is and what bands are really successful. And I think that's a big difference in today's music, because a lot of artists deem success as monetary. And I don't think that's the case. I think success is establishment of your band, being happy playing music, having the fans that you have, and just putting enough to survive on, right? You don't have to be Motley Crue and make $300 million. What are you going to do with that, right? There's nothing that having that money doesn't do anything. It doesn't change your ability to play music. It doesn't change your ability to interact with your fans. It doesn't change anything. All it does is probably hurt you to the fact that you can basically make the decisions you want to make, good or bad, right? And Motley Crue's made a bunch of bad ones, especially recently, right? I just think that success is measured in a very unique and unofficial way, right? It's very superficial. And I think that even extending outside of music, I think that's in general, right? People who are successful have what they need to survive. They live on their means and they enjoy life. They're generally happy people. And I think, like, if you look at the music world, I think Primus is that in the nutshell, right? They're always happy. They give great interviews. They love their fans. They have loyal fans, right? I just think that, like, a lot of these artists and musicians today look at success in way different terms. They don't look at it in terms of, being a band that people enjoy seeing. They look at it as the money and the influence that goes along with it. And I don't know. I personally, I think that a lot of the bands have a very warped idea of what success is. The power metal bands are great, right? A lot of them are big overseas, right? If you take Hammerfall in Italy and Europe, they're huge. If you take Blind Guardian, if you take Rhapsody of Fire, if you take, well, now they were Rhapsody, but now they're Rhapsody of Fire, right? If you take that appeal in the United States, most of the United States metalheads are like, meh, it's okay, right? But in Europe, these bands are huge. Sabaton's another one, right? They come to the United States and they have to tour with other people. When they go to Europe, they headline festivals. Sabaton plays for 100,000 people at least twice a year. Not many American bands are able to do that at all, right? So I think that it's just, it's a judgmental thing, especially in the United States, right? And what people view success and what they view as good. And again, I'm not knocking the United States and their, but when you look at the world view of metal and you look at the United States view of metal, the United States view of metal is like this. It's very narrow. It basically comes in on itself. And if you're in Europe or Japan overseas, their view of metal is expansive. It's outward. They follow bands that are local and make them big. They cheer for them. They go and see them. They support them. They do whatever they can. And in the United States, there's only a handful of bands that really get to do that, right? That get to tour and they do it, right? So, and Sugar, you know what it's like. You're a musician, right? You've done some stuff. I mean, I'm not going to go into great detail about it, but like, what I'm talking about, right? The bands that, are successful and happy, are the ones that have been around for a very, very long time. They understand what it's like in the music business to have a fan base that loves them and appreciates them and supports them. And a lot of bands don't remember their fans, right? They just do it for the grab. And unfortunately, like one of my favorite bands, Guns N' Roses, is like that, right? They're touring now just to tour. They all have enough money to last themselves 10 lifetimes, yet the product they're putting out now, right, when they tour isn't great. I mean, I'm not knocking them, but Axl's not the same Axl that he was 20 years ago, let alone 40 years ago, right? And I will say that about Metallica. I've said it before. Me and Kelly have talked about it, and I give credit where credit's due. At 62 years old, Metallica sounds great. They don't have a very large range of vocal tones. James has been pretty much the same James. They still are precise. They still are tight. They sound great. So I can't knock them. I don't particularly care for, them now as opposed to what they were before, but I'm not gonna bash them. I'll give them credit where it's due. Another guy is Halford, right? Like Rob Halford. Judas Priest sounds just as good today as they did 40 years ago. Anthrax, right? Joey Belladonna sounds fantastic. They sound great. Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden sounds great, right? Phil from Pantera. I love Phil. I think he's a great musician. He cannot hit the high notes anymore. He's not going to be able to sing Cemetery Gates. He just can't do it. He'll never do that live. He just cannot hit those vocal ranges anymore. And I'm not saying it's good or bad, right? But, at least he understands that he can't do it. He doesn't try to do it. He's not like Axl. Axl tries to sing like he did in 1989. He can't do it. He just simply can't. And I'm not knocking it. I love Guns N' Roses, but to see them now, it just doesn't do them justice. It's not the same person. It's not the same band, right? So it's just, to me, I'm not saying guys need to retire or hang it up, but when you've hit that pinnacle and you can do it, right? And as much as we joke around and say it, I mean, look at the Rolling Stones. They've been a band since the 50s, right? They got 50 plus years in the music business. They still sound great. I keep doing what you're doing, right? Mick Jagger isn't the Mick Jagger he was in the 80s or the 70s, but he still has it, right? He's not dancing around like he used to, but he still sounds great. He still has the same voice. He hits all the notes, sings all the songs flawlessly, right? But there's other bands that just can't do it, right? As much as, you know, whether you love him or hate him, another guy that's able to do it and do it very well is Sebastian Bach of Skid Row. He sounds phenomenal at 58 years old. He's awesome. He goes on stage and sings just like he did in the 80s. He hasn't missed a beat. Still has the same great power voice. Still has a phenomenal stage presence. Could still be able to do what he's doing, right? So, you know, it's phenomenal. You got to give the guy credit where credit's due. Kelly, it's 8 o'clock. I'm going to see if I can get you on. Let's see if we can make this happen. Where are you at? Let me see if I can find you. And we will go from there. Where are you? Where are you? I'm not seeing you here. Let me find you this way. So as of right now, it says you are not on live. So we'll give it a few more minutes and see what we can do here. See if we can find you. If we can, that'll be awesome. Diane, what's going on? The best name ever, Turd Ferguson, is awesome. That's a great name, right? If anybody's an Anchorman fan. The idea for that came about with Will Ferrell when they were doing Celebrity Jeopardy, and Turd Ferguson was Burt Reynolds. But apparently that idea came around on the set. I think it was Anchorman. They were just kind of hanging around one night, and Will Ferrell said, when you come on, do it. And he did it. So Turd Ferguson, if you guys aren't aware, is the Saturday Night Live skit where Will Ferrell played Alec Trebek on Celebrity Jeopardy, and Burt Reynolds changed his name to Turd Ferguson until 8:08. Well, we got 6 more minutes, so we'll try it at 8:08. Well, we'll see if we can get every last second out of it. But guys, thanks for hanging out with me. I know we were supposed to be live at 7:30. Somebody got into some trouble, naughty boy, and is not able to go live until 8:08 apparently. So we'll wait 5 more minutes and we'll go from there. But yeah, so if you guys are on, we're going to be talking music in about 5 minutes. Kelly will hop on with me, and we're going to have a good discussion about some topics that we were going to go over from last week. We kind of hit the big one, right? The underrated bands. I'm sure he's going to have a laundry list of bands that are on. So we'll actually start the show with that. Underrated bands. We can start basically through the genre, right? We can say what our most underrated bands are from each generation, right? Because we all have them, right? I can give at least 3 or 4 bands from the 80s, at least 3 or 4 bands from the 70s. The As I Lay Dying topic too. We can touch on that tonight, or if you want to wait for next week to do that. I sent Kelly a text last night. I came across a post that basically said, if you guys are not familiar with the band from As I Lay Dying, Tim Lambesis was the singer. I'll just give you the rundown. We can or can't talk about it tonight. We'll see how we get. But basically, what ended up happening was he got caught a couple of years ago. He spent 3 years in prison. He basically told an undercover police officer that he wanted to kill his wife, and he offered the cop $1,000 to do it. He said, if she disappears, you'll get your money. And they basically arrested him. They said it was a murder for hire plot. He was found guilty. He pled guilty. He apologized. He said that he was, taking a bunch of steroids. If you don't know who As I Lay Dying is, and you Google Tim Lambesis, Tim Lambesis was a phenom in the music business. He kind of looked like the Misfits did in the 90s, right? He was super jacked, muscular, ripped, basically a bodybuilder with long hair singing heavy metal is the best way to describe it. He was huge. Big arms, big chest, rippled six pack. The guy was an incredible vocalist, but he went crazy. He just kind of lost it. And so his band started a band called Woven War, which was As I Lay Dying with a different singer. Tim Lambesis gets out of prison, and basically they cancel Woven War and they get Tim Lambesis back, and he basically becomes As I Lay Dying. They go on tour. They have a great couple months of things. And then basically what happened was that all the original band quit on him and didn't give any reasonable explanation. They just said, we're going in a separate direction musically, and we wish him all the best of luck. So Tim Lambesis is a great vocalist, and he says, okay, I basically am As I Lay Dying, and Austrian Death Machine, right, where he does all the Schwarzenegger voices over heavy metal. He basically said, I'm going to start another version of As I Lay Dying, and he hired a bunch of bands different musicians from other bands. I think August Burn Reds was one of them. He just got a bunch of different guys, right? So anyways, where I'm going with the story is 2 days ago, all of those guys quit, all within a week. The guitarist quit first, then the drummer quit, and then the bassist quit, and then the other guitarist just quit the other day, and basically made a statement that says, we can no longer work together. We just feel that it's a toxic environment. The relationships that are built, the people who work for us and the crew and anybody who puts in effort should not be treated the way they're being treated. Now, I don't know if it's by Tim or if it's by somebody else and he doesn't say anything. I have no idea. I don't know the backstory. But you have to scratch your head when a pretty famous band that's influenced a lot of, people in the hard rock, heavy metal, and grindcore / degent movement, were one of the biggest bands on the planet at one point, aren't a band anymore. It makes you wonder. So I think that now we're just kind of like, I said, hey, this would be a good topic to talk about and kind of get into the similarities between music and sports, right? Because a band is basically a team, right? And you have to get along with people on your team and in your band. And so I told him maybe we should talk about that, and he agreed. So I don't know if we'll get into that tonight. We'll stay on probably. Kelly's going to get on in about a minute. I was actually hoping to end the live at like 8:30, but obviously I'm not going to go live with them for 21 minutes. So we'll probably call it quits at about 9 o'clock. I do have to get up for work tomorrow. So I don't want to Cosmic Witch. What's up? So I don't want to make it a super long thing, but I'm not going to cut it short either. But what we get tonight to talk about till about 9 o'clock, and then whatever we don't get a chance to come around to this week, we'll hit up next week for sure. Here we go. He was right, 8:08. On the dot.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about that.
No worries.
I was scheduled to go on a live myself last night. So on the dot, I was sitting in the back of an Uber and said, hey guys, sorry, I can't go live. But TikTok have very strict rules about going live in a moving vehicle. So they cut me off for 24 hours. So yeah, that's basically what happened. We can totally call it quits at 8:30. This is all my fault. We can do a redo tomorrow if that works for you. Whatever, it's totally my fault. So thank you for your patience. It's a really good thing that you're such a good talker. You kept things going so well. Right? That's amazing. I was trying to participate,
No, you did a great job. You changed some of my ears and caught me off with some stuff because I was like, I know the people. It's been a while, so it's like I needed the refresh in my mind. But yeah, I was very surprised. We'll start the show. So anyways, guys, I'm One Fun Guy Podcast. My buddy Kelly is Kelly Arzenik. Together we do the Pod Cult. We just come live on TikTok and we talk about music. So thank you all for joining us. Happy Halloween. Kelly, got anything to say before we start?
No, just again, apologies for not being on time due to my own ignorance of TikTok
Uh,
rules.
we're good.
Um,
So real quick, what was last night? Because I saw the pictures of the Kiss makeup. Was it like karaoke Kiss, or was it like cover bands, or like
yes,
what was it?
that was incredible. It was amazing. So apparently, my favorite spot in Chicago, the Liars Club, they're huge. They made a big deal out of Kiss. Like the entire
Okay,
place is has so much Kiss memorabilia and stuff in there. Um, they call themselves the Holy Dive Bar, which is
okay,
pretty funny if you're a metal
yeah,
fan. Last call is at 1:38. So it's a great
right,
place for an underground music fan, and it is small, but it's like the most atmospheric place
right,
you could ever imagine. I think Lemmy even used to go there whenever he was in town.
yeah,
But anyway, so because of the Kiss fandom there, every year they put on a Kiss karaoke night.
okay,
So last night was the 30th time they put it on.
awesome.
So for 30 years they've been doing Kiss karaoke. They missed they missed it twice because of COVID and stuff.
Sure.
Uh, but yeah, so it was Herb, the owner. He was dressed up in full jean costume, and I'm talking full.
Is he the one that did God of Thunder? Who did God
Yes,
of?
that
Is that
apparently
him?
that's a tradition. Like
Okay,
he starts karaoke night doing God of Thunder.
okay,
Um,
because he was actually really good.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's really good. And yeah, so they had a makeup station. So I got my Paul makeup done there because my buddy Joel and his wife Kate were there as Gene and Ace, so they
yeah,
needed a Paul. But there was a free makeup station, so I got some
nice.
Paul makeup
So you
done.
became the star man for the night.
I did.
You're the star child.
Yeah. I mean, if I would have had the energy or whatever, I would have done the half Eric Carr and half Vinnie
Right.
Vincent, just because of nobody would ever do either one of them.
Yeah.
So do half of each. But yeah, no. So it was still like yeah, on stage at Liars Club. It was as for any karaoke night, you sign up and you say what song and whatever you want to
Right.
sing, and people came up there and got up there. And the funny thing is that there were good singers there too that sort of
Sure.
like hopped in and did harmonies to some songs and stuff. Like it was just such a like
Right.
really really fun time where it was like everybody was into it, and it
It's
was
awesome.
yeah, it was super great. I stumped them though. Herb called me out on stage for
Mhm.
some fucking smartass requested a song from the Paul Stanley solo album. What the fuck?
Yeah.
And that was me. So yeah, I stumped them. I
was-
didn't get to it. I didn't.
It was
get to go
actually
up and do
cool
it, but-
because when they did the 4 separate albums, when they did their own, I really liked the Ace one because he did New York Groove,
yeah,
and that was awesome. That cover was phenomenal.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's a fierce debate among Kiss
Sure.
fans, I think. But it tends to boil down to, is it Ace or is it Paul?
Right.
The Gene and Peter albums are kind of dismissed.
Yeah.
I'm on the Paul side. I think that yes, Ace did some fantastic guitar work, but there's really only one song that I think is really really good, and that is
Mhm.
New York Groove.
Yeah.
Paul Stanley is more to my taste.
Yeah. Sure.
So I'm a Paul Stanley solo album fan there.
Yeah.
And obviously, it was all Kiss talk there too, right? What's
Sure.
what's
Yeah,
the favorite album?
And it's funny because one of my favorite Kiss songs flies under the radar, and it wasn't even the original guy. So it's like,
which one is that?
now it was just on the tip of my tongue. War Machine.
Oh yeah. So Joel, my buddy, he was gonna go up and do that, and he was there's a cover version. I forget the name of the band now, but we listened to it in his car
Yeah.
on the way back. But it's like a death metal growl version
Okay.
of War Machine, and it's
Actually, I think 6 Feet Under does it.
yes, that's
Yeah.
it. That's six.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was.
And that's
So-
Chris Barnes from Cannibal Corpse.
Oh, what is it? Okay, cool, nice. Yeah, so he was gonna go up and do that, and he almost got. It was someone that was called out to come up and
Yeah.
do under the song, and that guy didn't make it up on stage in time, so they called out Joel to go up and do that.
Right.
But then the original buddy showed up,
What's
and
up, Sylvia?
then it was 2 or 3 more songs
Sure.
or whatever, and then it started to get late, so it was like it's a school night, so we
Sure.
we got
Right.
we got a jet. But so he was inches away from doing the 6 feet under version of
Yeah.
War Machine, which is one of the greatest songs that they did, and a reason why a lot of people think that Creatures of the Night is the best
Yeah.
Kiss album, which I disagree with.
It's
But
one of the more heavier ones.
Yeah.
So I think that's why it attracts more fans, because it is the heavier version of it, right? So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, Kiss has so many facets to it, right? And that's why they're
Right.
so infinitely interesting to me too. It's like, you can get a good pop song, you can even get a decent disco song out of it if you want to, but it comes down to the good rock and roll tunes, which
right.
is why Dress to Kill is my favorite
Yeah.
album.
Dress to
of
Kill
theirs.
is awesome.
Yeah.
And you know what? One of my other favorite Kiss songs too is like a ballad, but Forever is a great song. And that was their Unmasked. So that was the one they did it without makeup.
So that was on Unmasked, yeah, and that's where I think that they start to decline. So I really haven't listened to Unmasked very much.
Yeah,
I'm not
it's
that
very
familiar
weird
with
because it's like it mimics any 80s ballad that you could get. It's just a great tune, but it's not heavy at all. It's an acoustic version of a love song, and it's phenomenal. It's great. It reminds me of Firehouse, if you are familiar with Firehouse.
Yeah.
It kind of has that feel to it, but it's one of my favorite songs though, nonetheless. They were great.
Yeah, no, and we talked about this too, like, in terms of their influence, it goes it's so far reaching, like, you can talk about, their business acumen or their, fakery and all that shit, but,
Sure. And the thing is that we've touched on this before, but like, as far as Kiss and business go, there's no better band to emulate. Merchandising yourself, putting yourself out there, basically monetizing everything, right? Every part of their music and band was money, right? They were driven by money. And I don't knock them for that, but like what they did as far as marketing goes and merchandising, every band emulates them in some capacity, right? Whenever you make a shirt or you make a hat, or you make a bandana, or you make wristbands, or you make anything that you sell at a table at a show, is all correlated back to Kiss. They were the band to do it.
Yeah, and I saw a comment from I forget the name, but someone that is a professional musician that made a comment about, at some point your passion turns into money. You want to support your family and live on it, so you kind of like cater to whatever it is that brings you income. Fundamentally, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think really. They
And I mean,
took
how
it
many
to
bands
the
do you
next
know?
level? But the thing is too that they were. You also have to understand why people actually bought that stuff too, right? Like it was a connection. I mean, like people felt like they were like, I love Kiss so much, I want to be like them. I like them as people. I like them as a band. It wasn't just like I like their records. It was it turned into a whole lifestyle thing, right?
Sure, right. I mean, how many bands do you know that make condoms and caskets, right?
And
It's life and death, right? It's the beginning and the end.
I don't know if you've heard of the Froyo effect. Have you heard of the Froyo effect?
No.
Which is basically, like someone came up with frozen yogurt and made money off of it. So everybody else saw that, oh, frozen yogurt, that's where
Right.
money is. And so they all jumped into it. And then all of a sudden, prices had to go down. So
Yeah.
nobody in the frozen yogurt business made any money. But the point of that is that, you have to then not be your regular frozen yogurt. You have to go further and do
Sure.
something new with it. So it was like companies came up with the frozen yogurt lounges and all
Yeah.
that stuff, right? So I think the Kiss is, we're ahead of the curve in terms of that too. It's like, hey, let's try doing casket.
Yeah,
Let's try doing pinball machines. Let's
Yeah.
try doing comic books, whatever, right? Because everybody else now is doing
Right.
the usual hats and badges and T-shirts and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, let's do something else and try to make money off of that because nobody else is doing it, and someone's gonna buy it because it's so ridiculous or because they're a diehard fan or whatever, right? So there's some business innovation in that, not music
Absolutely, right.
innovation, but business innovation.
Yeah, and like
which
Sugar
is-
said, Gene said from day one he was going to monetize the band. They were going to do everything they could in their power to make money, and they did, right? I mean, what a great concept. And to put in your mind, right, to say you're going to do something and actually do it is a very unique thing, right? Because how many people say they're going to do something and they never come through on it? Gene and Paul said that from the beginning, right? We're going to make this the biggest band in the world, and we're going to sell everything under the sun, and they did, right? So, I mean, how awesome is that, right? To say it and come through is awesome. How many bands say they're going to do this, 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 and this, and in 5 years they're not even a band anymore? And here Kiss is saying it from the get-go, and look now all the way back to 1974, right? I mean, holy crap, that's awesome, right? Everything they've accomplished,
Yeah.
and said they were going to do it, they did it, right? I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah, and when you think about it, even from an independent musician perspective, right? If we really get down to brass tacks, who's more hypocritical? Is it the Kiss people that say that, no, my music is a business. I am going to make as much money out of my art as possible, even if a lot of it is not actually the music, or the independent artist that says, no, I am going to keep my integrity and not sell things because it feels like I'm commercializing myself. And that means that I will not make any money, right? It's a, I'm sure that there's a happy medium in between somewhere. I don't think that Kiss ever lost their integrity in terms of what they set out to do, but the thing is that they did set out to have, like, we have a great band, we can make a lot of money, and we're gonna make that happen.
Yeah.
Right. And here's the goal. And they set these like extremely lofty goals and were extremely ambitious in trying to achieve that. And I wish that for every independent musician out there, right?
Yeah.
Feel good about what you do, but
right. And you have to make
still,
it, right? That's the big thing. You have to have a product that people are going to listen to in the first place, right? Because if Kiss made
but that's just baseline.
Right.
That's just baseline.
So that's your start, right? To make music and put it out there, right? Then the next step is to make music, put it out there, and put it in front of people, right? So you actually want to play shows and you want to be. So from a garage band to basically 4 people jamming to playing, Madison Square Garden, it's not easy, right? And Kiss did it. So at the very foundation of them, they were a band, right? And a very good one at that. So you can make fun of them all you want. Oh, they did disco or they did that, right? But how many bands out there made their own movies and had movies made about them?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, and I'll do a yes and to that too, right? People don't invest that much in that many things to the extent that people did to support Kiss if they don't feel a connection to the band, right? That goes beyond just, I just like the music, right? And I think that's super key. Like Kiss turned into a culture.
Yeah.
It turned into, a community, a sense of belonging. And
that Kiss Army, right?
And I think that's one thing that a lot of musicians are missing too, is that, I'm just going to make awesome music,
Yeah.
and people are gonna like it and buy my MP3s off of Bandcamp or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
Can I ask a quick
No.
question? You may or
Yeah.
may not know the answer. Was Kiss the first band to have a fan club?
No, I don't. I really don't think so. I think that like there were Beatles and
But I mean,
and
like, where you
Stones
paid money to get a card, the Kiss Army card, right? You had to pay a certain amount of money, and you were part of the Kiss Army, and they sent you the little card that said Kiss, and it was like a little credit card thing, and they sent you like a magazine and like a Kiss thing. Were they the first ones to do that? To actually like start like, I mean, I'm not talking like Beatles mania, but like you didn't pay the Beatles money to be part of their fan club. If you
No,
did for Kiss, were they the first ones?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm pretty certain that there were bands before then. I read a book by a guy called, by the way, that's a fantastically awesome book in terms of how degenerate the music business was. But it was Danny Sugarman. He was sort of the fan relations guy for the Doors
Okay.
back in the day. I don't know if they had like a paid thing, but I'm pretty sure that they had like, there was a newsletter going out and
Yeah.
shit like that. I don't know if people paid for it.
Okay.
But Kiss Army was, I think was was the first when it was like, I am a card carrying
Right.
Kiss Army
Yeah.
member. So I
Right.
think again, like so many other Kiss things, they took that to a level that had never been achieved before.
Sure.
It's like, people could, pull up their wallets and show like, here's my Kiss Army card.
Yeah.
I've got credibility, right? So
And how many bands, too, getting more kudos to Kiss, start in New York but get adopted by a different city, right?
and
Because Detroit,
I'm just saying that like, they created a global community of Kiss fans, and people
Yeah.
feel like I am part of Kiss Army, and that and
I mean, they played
and
Cold
then
Fall.
that escalates into like, who's the most committed Kiss Army
Right.
member, right?
Yeah.
I bought a fucking casket, okay?
Right. Dime, right? Got buried in one.
Well,
Dimebag.
like, see what I mean, though, right?
Yeah.
And people wouldn't do that unless there was that community aspect of it, more that goes beyond just like, and Kiss Army is alive and well.
Yeah.
There
Oh,
are people
absolutely.
that are, that have been members
Yes.
for 40 years that still are committed members and all that stuff, right? So
Mhm.
if there are musicians on here, indie musicians, build community. That's the key to your livelihood. Have people commit to you as a thing,
Yeah.
with the baseline being the music, but it's about the community you build. Sorry. Anyway,
Yeah.
that was my tangent rant for the day. But
No, that's awesome, right? Because you can, you look at a lot of like, we said it before, but the strongest community in music is by far the punk rock scene, right? You can argue metal, but like there's something about punks that is just mind blowing of how loyal they are, how supportive they are, and just being in the moment with their bands. Like it's awesome, right? I don't think there's a stronger community as far as fans go than the punk rock community. And this is going all the way back to the Ramones and, the Misfits and the Exploited and the Damned and bands like that, even the Sex Pistols, right? I mean, they are loyal fans, right? They're super loyal and super integrated into that music and that community. And all the bands in that community support each other, right? Metal is pretty good, but there's a lot of bands that don't like each other and they go on record and they say it, right? You don't really hear the punks talking shit about other punk bands. They just don't do it. Very few guys will talk bad about other bands, even if they don't like them. They just keep their mouth shut, where like metal bands will openly talk shit about other metal bands.
Yeah. No, you're right. So what I think the difference is there is that punk is more nerdy. It's the outcast. It is the guy that was bullied in the corner of a schoolyard, that banded together with other people that were bullied in a corner of the schoolyard. While I think that the macho aspect of metal means that some of those bullies also are attracted to that, right? You know,
Sure.
I do think that in metal there are both sides to that, right? You know, it is that metal has jocks in it and punk rock does not. You know,
Yeah.
like you just make a super simple generalization here, right? You know, I
Sure.
know it's,
And yeah,
but
and it goes back like to everything has its rule breakers, right? Like, I think a lot of the punk rock community, if you were a quote unquote popular person or the cool person, you dug the Misfits, right? Like they were the band that was kind of like, everybody kind of got into them, right? They were like the cool band, right? And so in that punk rock community. But I just it's just interesting because the reason I said that is because like when you hear metal bands talk about like their metal, I guess you could say influences or metal heroes, right? And they talk about it, they talk about them, right? Like you get some guys that are passionate, like your Zach Wilds and your Dimes and your other bands like that. But when you listen to people talk about their musical inspirations and heroes in the punk rock community, it is a different attitude about how they talk about people, right? Like, listen to Randy Blythe talk about Bad Brains, right? It's soulful. It move like
mhm,
it makes him who he is, right?
yeah,
And it's not like I'm not taking anything away from like, Zach Wilde talking about, all the greats before him. But when you hear guys talk about the punk community, it moves you. Like they talk from the heart, like it's soulful. And you don't
yeah.
find that in metal very often.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And I'm speaking from personal experience too, because I was growing up more a punk guy than a metal guy back in the day, right? Um, but it really comes from I think pretty much everyone comes from a place of not belonging, of
Mhm.
estrangement, that sort of
Right.
thing, in punk rock more so, like on a pretty serious level. You
Yeah.
know, like it's like I don't belong anywhere, and then punk happens, and it's like these misfits of
Mhm.
people that is like, oh my god,
Yeah.
I didn't know you guys existed, and then it becomes a total commitment, um, which is also why it's so cliquey. I
Yeah.
think punk rock is very cliquey. You
Mhm.
know, it's very gate kept. I think, and there are standards and boundaries
Yeah.
and philosophies that you can't cross them, right?
Right.
Um, which is why, why there's not much money in punk rock.
Yeah. You know.
Because it was like, if you charge more than $7 for a show, you're a fucking
Right. Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
trying to profit off
Right.
whatever. But as a community satisfaction thing, you're absolutely right. It's a very, very tight sense of belonging there, and it's
Yeah.
just because I have searched for such a long time to find a place where I belong. Now I have found it, and I'm going to protect it.
Yeah. And on
So
another subgenre, right, other than punk, I think that's the same way in the industrial community, right? When people go to raves and they go to like warehouse parties and stuff like that, it's a very unique perspective with a bunch of people. Like it's a different vibe. It's more of a community vibe, right? Like people aren't there to hurt each other. They're not there to like, be to drink and get drunk and be jerks and, mean. Like, I mean, let's face it, heavy metal is like that, right? Like mosh pits get violent, right? And the more drunk people get, the more harder they hit, right? And some guys just need to be put in their spot. But you go to like punk shows and you go to like raves, right? The industrial music, like when they, it's a unique experience, right? It's a much different one, right? And I'm not saying there's no camaraderie in metal community, but like when you go to like those shows, right? It's different. It's a different vibe. It's much more communal.
I I I I I think that the metal bands that I like and I think matter and I think should be adhered to, I think that they do have a very similar philosophy as the punk rock scene.
Yeah,
Um,
but I'm
I want to give you an example, right? We were just a couple of weeks ago at Mushroom Head,
yeah,
right? and there was the band before them,
Upon a Burning Body.
Upon a Burning Body. Someone got hurt in the pit, right? The band stopped immediately and said, "Did you guys see what I just saw?
Mm-hmm.
What's up with that?" You know, like there was a genuine care for that, right? You know, like, no, you're not. People aren't supposed to get hurt. Like, there shouldn't be any elbows. There shouldn't be any close fists. That's not what it's about. Like, we're all here.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a violent expression of things, but we don't want anybody to get hurt. We're all here because we're part of a thing, and we express ourselves in a very peculiar way. You know, but we do have our code, right? There is a code to the behavior, right? So I think for all the great music that happened that night, I think that was my favorite moment that whole night was when the band stopped and it was like, guys, you know, something bad happened. Whenever you run around, be mindful. If someone falls down, pick them up. So there was that thing. Because I do think, to expand a little bit on where we started with this, I do felt like that particular show had more of the quote unquote jock type folks, you know, not necessarily the outcasts, but it was more the cool kids at school type of thing, you know, for lack of a better term, that were there.
Mushroom Head, I think,
that might misinterpret, you know, what they see. You know, like, I'm going to a metal show and I can kick and punch anybody that I want to, you know, or whatever, right? But that's not what it's about.
And I think Mushroom Head is one of those weird, like, very rare bands that they aren't big on a huge scale, but they're big enough. But the community of the Mushroom Head fans, I think, between the masks, the outfits, the show presence, like, it's a much tighter community than most other bands because of that factor, right? And I'm not saying the masks have anything to do with it, but they kind of do, right? Like, because there are a lot of bands that wear masks and face paint, but they don't have the community like Mushroom Head has. And it's just a very weird thing because, you know, fans of Slipknot are fans of Slipknot, but they will, you know, they're not loyal like Slipknot or like Mushroom Head fans are. Mushroom Head fans will buy the masks, they'll do the meet and greets, they'll do all of that stuff, and they're a band that will do that, right? They'll sell their merchandise. When they get done playing, they rip the masks off and they sell them, right? So when they're done and you wait in the back and you say, hey, listen, can I get your mask? They'll take it and give it to you, right? You got to wait and do it, but like, they'll give you won't see Slipknot giving their masks to anybody.
Right. No, and we're getting back to the Kiss thing right there, right?
Exactly. That's my point. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But also, you know, like, the punk metal type thing. Like, I do think that the punk scene with its cliquey, you know, protection of itself and its philosophy, like, this is what it's supposed to be like being in this scene. If you want to be part of it, you have to adhere to that. Yeah. I think that there's a sense of that in the metal scene, but not as much. And I think it's easier for folks to, you know, both hear and be part of the metal scene without really understanding. Like, you know, there's gatekeeping in both, but I think that there's more gatekeeping for you to get into the punk underground thing and really be part of that scene. There's a bit more gatekeeping probably just because of, like, you know, are you worthy?
Right. Yeah.
Type of thing, you know, which is exhausting, but it's really for self-preservation. Like, how can we keep this pure, and with intent, that is what it's supposed to be. Like, you know, we don't want to bastardize it. But I do think, I watched an old Max Cavalera interview, just a couple of days ago, when he was saying that same sort of thing. Is like, you know, I just heard this thing and it blew me away, and it was like, I just wanted to go and, you know, meet the people and be part of what they're doing, and you know, like, I just want to go there and meet these people.
Yeah, and it's funny too, because, like, when you look at the global phenomenon of Sepultura, right? here's a small band from Brazil that made it big, right? Like their outreach was fantastic, right? And they never forgot where they came from. I know Max joined Soulfly, created Soulfly, and did that whole thing, but till this day, when you go to a Sepultura show, all you see is Brazilian flags everywhere. They're very home based, and they never forgot that, which is great, right? Because, like, you know, we see it a lot in the metal community with bands from Europe, right? From Norway and Sweden and Denmark and, you know, all these other, but South American bands, it don't really kind of tend to get, you know, the you know, homage that they deserve. And then especially when you get, you know, a band like Brazil that's, you know, really, how many other bands from Brazil do you know? I don't know any.
Yeah, I know a few. I mean, we can. Ratos de Parao is one. They were more grindcore. I know Brujeria. Are they Mexican or
Mexican?
They're
Yeah,
Mexican.
and their singer just passed away, Juan Brujo.
Oh no.
Yeah.
But that was one of those things that I remember from. I wasn't a tape trader, but you know the tape trading days in late '80s, early '90s. I think it's still going on. I think that there's still I hear that there's still a vibrant tape trading scene happening.
I think it's more like so. Remember we were talking. We said a few weeks ago. What was the last CD you bought that I don't even remember? But like
Right.
I bought the CD at the Mushroom Head show, right? And it's the same. It's no different. It's got Halloween masks on it. Instead, it was just one of those things. But I think that like CD trading and making a CD with one or two songs on it when you go to shows and you still, I think that's really prevalent still. And I think that it's easier to say, hey, go to my website and get my digital download, which is
Yeah.
basically the new version of tape trading. But I think CDs are still prevalent as much as you know they were, because it's just easier to give somebody something of substance than to say, hey, go to my Instagram, look me up, and then go to my link tree and then find my band and download my song, right? If you
Yeah.
hand somebody a CD, it eliminates that whole process. Your name is
Yeah.
on it, your logo's on it. Now you could write your Instagram on it, right? And where they could find you. But giving somebody a physical copy of something that they have in their hand and hold it, it means something. And I think people are getting back to that now.
Yeah, but what I was getting at back in the day, like you know, the '80s, '90s tape trading scene was that
Yeah.
I was astonished by the number of Latin American bands that were so damn awesome. There were tons of bands from, especially Chile. Chile is a freaking hotbed
Yeah.
of bands, and it, I don't know
Argentina,
why there's with that scene there, how there are no well-known Chilean bands out there today. I have no idea, because that scene was so super vibrant. And I mean, obviously, you know, Brazil is next door, and Mexico has had tons and tons of great stuff coming out of there too, right? And it's astonishing to me how the representation has been so low.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm guessing it might have a little bit of cultural thing. Like, you know, Europe is small. There can be a lot of festivals where a lot of bands play, and you know, 75% of them are fairly small or not mainstreamy type of bands. They had 3 or 4 mainstreamy type acts, and then you know, there's 20 other bands that nobody's ever heard of that attendees will then walk out of and buy their shit. But South America, Latin America is just so large, and there's not much money for a lot of people. I mean, let's face it, most of the fans in metal and punk are not rich people.
Yeah.
Most. So there's, people generally don't have much money to be able to travel far and buy an expensive festival ticket. Like that's an unfortunate reality, right?
Yeah.
It's definitely not
So it's
a
funny.
white collar culture,
Did I ever tell you? Did I ever tell you my Samash story?
No.
Did I ever go over that with you?
No.
So
Let's do it.
We're on our honeymoon, in the middle of a jungle in Mexico, doing an ATV tour and seeing wild exotic animals. They had the monkeys, the parrots, and everything, right? So there's about 20 other people on the tour with us, and we're all riding these ATVs through the jungle. We're ripping them around. We go and we break, and they said, okay, everybody can start heading to the tour bus now. We'll get our stuff together and we'll go. Everybody meet in the bus in about 30 minutes. And so we're hanging out, and we kind of waited till everybody goes. And I just ended up taking my shoes off. And I said, well, I'm going to put my other shoes on and be comfortable for the bus ride back, right? So everybody left. We're sitting there, and all of a sudden I hear this like heavy metal coming from this guy's laptop. So I walk up to him and I go, hey, what is that? And he goes, oh, I'm remixing my drums from my band. And I go, well, what band are you in? And he goes, I was in a band called Samash. We were the first Mexican metal band to play in the United States. And I said, that's pretty cool. So this guy is running these jungle tours in the middle of Mexico in the desert. And I come across him, and I'll pull up these old emails. You could tell the date on it. It's 11/3 of 14. So he basically says, I said, hey, it was awesome meeting you. And he basically says, yeah, don't forget my band is Samash. And I said, okay. And he sent me a bunch of the pictures from the jungle for free, because you're obviously supposed to pay for them, right? But he sent me his band link, and this was his band, Samash.
That's really cool. Yeah,
And
send me that link too.
I will.
Sure.
And his
Put
name
it,
was,
if you post this on the YouTube for folks
yeah,
viewing,
I'll
you know,
screenshot it and do it. But it's the guy's name was Carlos Velasquez. He was the drummer. But he said of all the Mexican metal bands that have ever been in existence, he said Samash was the first one. They played a show in Texas. They were the first metal band to play in the United States. And he said they basically set the tone for, you know, all the other Mexican metal bands and there's a lot of good ones out there, right? But his band was the first. And I met this dude in the middle of the desert. He just happened to be drumming on his laptop. He was editing his drum tracks from the studio. And he's like, I have no other time to do it than here. And I listened to him. He had the kit on his laptop, and he was basically going through the track and tracking it and basically turning it into audio files that he could send it. That's what they were doing. They were emailing each other.
That's amazing. I have a similar story, and I apologize if I've told you this before, but
No, please.
I was on vacation in Mexico. My ATV tour was not so successful because I don't know how to drive those things. So it was kind of disastrous, that part of it. But there was, how there's the evening shows, right? There's, some sort of Michael Jackson impersonator or whatever, right? But there was one night when it was Mexican fire drumming.
Okay.
So it was, it was down on the beach. And I see these, long-haired Mexicans, and it was, I even think that they used torches to actually hit drums or whatever. Like it was really heavy percussive, very native sounding type shit, right? But, the spidey sense, that we all have is like, I know that there's something going on here. So when they were done with the show, I went down and it was like, you guys have a metal band, right? You guys play Death or something, right? And they were like, yeah, and that was the highlight of the night for them, So it's like, okay, tell me about your band, Now you talked about, my buddies in Sweden and all that stuff, right? And it was fucking amazing. It's so weird though, like, but it's really amazing to find that stuff. And to be honest, I have to admit, the paradise that is the Playa del Carmen type area, and someone says, I'm playing death metal and I live in Playa del Carmen, it's like, where the fuck is your inspiration?
Yeah.
Your life has to be really fucking shitty to want to do death metal when you're surrounded by blue ocean and palm trees and white sand.
You know what? Sometimes it's just in your blood, right? You just feel it, and that's what they do, right? It doesn't matter where you're at.
it's not nature necessarily, right?
Yeah,
Obviously Mexico has a very the imagery in their sort of culture that
hmm
goes back hundreds and hundreds of years is very closely aligned to what metal is doing, like
yeah.
dealing with death and horror and
Do you
all
have
that
videos
stuff.
of that show?
What's that?
Do you have videos of that show?
No, I don't. I don't even think that I had a phone at that point.
Okay, so it was pretty long ago.
No, I was phone resistant for the longest time.
All right, fair enough, fair enough. Um, I'm gonna try to find something here and see if it's similar to what you had seen.
I don't because I did get an email from them and they sent me links to their stuff, but I don't think that I still have it.
Yeah,
Because this was maybe 2012, something like that, like we're talking 10 plus years ago.
yeah, absolutely. Because we did the same thing. We ended up catching one of those. It was a Mayan fire show, and it was the same thing, right? Heavy drums, heavy fire. They're dancing around, but very tribal, right? Like very primitive, but like captivating, not boring. Like it was entertaining, and it was just the coolest thing to see the show, in its entirety like that, because we don't get that here. It's their culture, but they came out with the headdresses on, and they came out like it was very tribal. They're awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, you and me being, I just did a post earlier today about the gatekeeping of subgenres or whatever, right?
Yeah,
But you and me have been fairly deep in the scene. Me longer ago,
sure,
not
sure.
so much as much recently as you have, but you can still tell,
Yeah,
like, so when you see that kind of show and the way it's set up. And the vibe that you get is like, no, this is like going to a fucking
yeah,
metal show.
right.
You
You
know,
can
like
tell.
I can tell that this is a metal concept. These are people that have studied, the Dios or whatever. I don't know, but you see what I'm saying, right? Like
Yeah.
these are not just sort of your average Mexican people thinking that fire is cool.
Yeah, and they're very good at what they do. Like it's not like a knockoff cheesy thing where it's like a bunch of like these are grown men who have been playing instruments for a while, and they get paid very well for doing what they do. So I don't want to make it seem like we're just kind of making poking fun at this. Like these are real musicians
Yeah.
that are very very talented in their own mind. They're awesome.
And sometimes also just the way they move their heads. So it's like, like
Yeah,
I can tell it that they're resisting from doing the
Right.
head banging.
yeah, exactly, right.
They bob their heads a little bit, but I know that they would like to throw their hair around a bit more than
Yeah.
what they're doing, right? Maybe because they don't want their hair to catch fire. But anyway, yeah. But the point being, to go back 10 minutes from now or whatever,
Right.
is the whole, and I think it might go also back to the whole belonging thing or feeling like an outsider. Latin
Yeah,
America is often dismissed as the bullied
Sure. Yeah.
kid in the corner of the schoolyard,
Yeah.
as a region. Or not. I don't know, but
No.
I think that might be a contributing factor why the whole metal thing is so
Yeah.
vibrant there and so good, and
And
they might be doing
traditionally,
just fine in the
right.
regions. So that's why they haven't really
Yeah.
branched out and become famous in America or Europe or
Right.
whatever, right?
And that's the thing, right? Like essentially, when you look at music as a whole, the United States is new to all this, right? Like you have people that wrote symphonies in the 1700s in Europe. America wasn't even here at that point, right? You're talking 1600, 1500. We're new to this, right? Europe's had music, and the Middle East has had music for hundreds, thousands of years. We're new
Yeah,
to
and
this. This is new to us.
Yeah, and if we choose to disregard the whole native thing, right, of America the American invasion, if you will, right? There was still a competition between Spanish culture, English culture, and French culture, which
Sure,
is all, and then people settled and people got rich. So you got people from Ireland, and you got people from Scandinavia, and got people from Germany and Eastern Europe and all that stuff too. That it was never like a cohesive thing in terms of quote unquote white North America, right?
And for sure,
it was all competing, and it was all interaction, and it was some people got along and some didn't, and obviously that shapes culture, and it shapes creativity and music. So the U.S. Especially because Canada was kind of like it's still pretty segregated in terms of English French thing, but I think it's been more stable. But the U.S. Has been, for better or worse, so full of conflict and integration, and
let's face it, like modern music, the United States basically takes the gold medal for that, right? Mm-hmm. So music from basically
for that reason.
For the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, when all these mega companies started making music, right? We obviously are the throne to that, right? If anybody who is anybody in the world wants to make it in music, they come to California. They go to Hollywood, right? It's where all the big studios are. It's where all the music producers are. It's where all the executives are.
Nashville now too, but yeah.
In the grand cloud of music, the United States is a baby in terms of music that was made in China, Japan, the Middle East, Europe. Those countries have been producing music for, like I said, hundreds, if not thousands of years. So we're new to it. But modern music, the United States is the king in terms of that. But globally and historically, the United States is probably seventh, maybe eighth. I mean, music in India has been around forever, right? They've been, so we're new to this, right? So culturally and globally, we're maybe eighth or ninth, in terms of history of music. But with modern music, we're obviously number one, because no one's going to go say, I'm going to go to China and make a record, right? Everyone comes here.
Yeah. And I think for very much for that particular reason, right? Just because of, contradiction and clashes and influences from various places, it's been a lot easier to come by. And I mean, Europe, sure. I mean, if it's amazing when you go through Europe, like how you can notice that, just going across the border from Germany to France and then down to Spain, how different it is. But those are all cultures that have been well established for, hundreds or thousands of years or whatever, right? While in America, it was like an invasion of all these things all at once that needed to find a place. And that includes from Asia, and that includes from, from Africa forcibly and all that stuff, right? So I think that's why America or the US has been so good at inventing the blueprints for so many things. I think that Europe has been really good at taking a lot of stuff from the US and refining it and turning it into something consumable. Also, right?
And
like
again,
like Beatles or the Rolling Stones got bigger in that type of music that any American band did, but they took American music and refined it and turned it into something that was more palatable and not
and when you
so
hear
raw.
something for the first time, right, you kind of are like shocked by it and you're interested in it, but then most people do the history of it, and one that comes to mind talking about Mexican music is Richie Valens, right? He did La Bamba. La Bamba was a song written in the mid 1800s. It's an old Mexican song. He just made it rock and roll. So traditionally, Hispanic music has been being played for hundreds of years before Richie Valens ever. But on the scene of America, a lot of people were introduced to that kind of music for the first time. He brought it mainstream.
Yeah.
So if you didn't live in Mexico or know anything about Mexican music, he was the one that brought the attention to it.
One thing that I find, so I'm going to do yes and to that. And one thing that I find so interesting about Mexico too, it was that they had Austrian of all countries. They had Austrian emperors ruling Mexico for a long time. So the German oompa boompa type of marching music
Yeah.
seems to be still the cornerstone of a lot of what we consider makes, you know, when that, you know, crazy bouncing, you know, uh, car with a, you know,
Yeah.
that's freaking awesome, like a badass Mexican, you know,
Right.
is going by in a bouncing 80s Ford Mercury or whatever it is. Um, and you hear like, you know, this kind of like nerdy German horn marching music thing.
Yeah.
It's such a weird thing, but they took the instrumentation of that
Sure.
and put their local melodies on top of the Austrian German sounding
Yeah.
instrumentation, and it turned into this weird fucking Mexican
Right.
music.
And that's all the lowrider community, right?
I think it's so Mexican music, and how passionate they are about that shit too is like, it's, I think that the Mexican music is one of the weirdest type of music that I know about, because of the, you know, the juxtaposition between what sounds like traditional Aztec type melodies,
Right. And,
on top of German marching music.
yeah. And it's funny
So
because
weird.
one of our first episodes we did, right? We talked about the heavy influence of like Viking sounds and music, right? Like
Yeah.
Monomarth, and you had all these bands now that are taking basically the old school eclectic folk music and turning it into metal, right? And a lot of bands are very successful at doing that.
Yeah. And I think that goes back to the fact that metal, when we talked about this, I think it was last week, actually, that it speaks to so much of the primal human needs. You know, like, we are okay now to deal with metal as a primal expression.
Yeah.
And you know, all these native musics, you know, the Vikings, the Aztecs, whatever, right? That is still kind of primal. It came out of like a need for expressing, you know, what was in your soul type of thing. So mixing those two things makes so much sense.
Right.
And it's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
I am being cognizant of you and your energy level. I know we hit the night, we hit the 9 o'clock mark, and you're a half hour past your limit already.
It's all right. Yeah. So what we'll do here is next week's show, we'll pick up where we left off. Here we'll wrap up the tribal stuff, and then I really kind of want to get into the atmosphere of not so much the as I lay dying story, but I really think there's a lot of like music community, and especially with like bands that form, and like friendships, and you know, growing old and apart, and you know, afraid of each other, and like, you know, being basically not able to communicate with each other, where it's like a team community, right? And so I really think it's a cool topic to talk about, because you know, band members, they are a unique anomaly, right? Because they're basically a family, right? They're as close as you can get without being related. I mean, they're doing everything together. I mean, let's face it, that's what they do. And
Yeah.
you know, and so I think it's a cool topic, especially just with like, again, I don't know what's going on with the As I Lay Dying camp. I was a huge fan of theirs. I really like their music. Obviously, the singer has a lot of mental health issues, and he's very unstable. And I'm assuming that's going to come out in the next few weeks. It's kind of like the Jane's Addiction thing, right? We touched on that with basically them ending their shows and saying we're no longer a band. You know, it happens, but I think now it's more open, right? Because of the internet age and the way that we are basically given an open door into their lives. We now know, right, that these guys are dealing with some serious mental health issues.
Yeah, and we're expecting as an audience to know more about their daily lives as well. I think it's a great topic. And before I go, I just want to leave this a little thought in your head too, especially with touring bands, is that, you know, if you have a workplace and a house where you live, you go to work for your 8 hours and then you leave work and you go home to your house. If you're in a touring band, you're not going home.
Yeah.
It is 24 hours of every day that you're around the same people, like in a bus, traveling, playing, preparing, all that stuff, right? You know, so it is a different dynamic than having a regular job. So I think it's a really interesting topic to explore, like, you know, how your regular teamwork, you know, how different it is.
And I really think a unique perspective is because obviously you're a music person, you've been in bands, you've been around artists, and I've been on teams. I've been in locker rooms. I've been around other athletes. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of similarities, but there's a ton of differences. And, you know, I really want to talk about that in whole next week, because I think the similarities are a lot more similar than people realize, but the differences are a lot more drastic than people realize. And I just think, you know, you being a musician and being in bands and me being an athlete and being on sports teams, we can talk about the unique experiences between both, right? You know,
and I'll throw in the corporate world as a third aspect of that too, right? You know,
and obviously you've done that, right? So obviously I played football in college, and that was where it ended for me. So I never got the professional level where the corporate aspect was in it. But I've been friends with people who have, and have talked to them about it, and kind of know the ins and outs of football, especially as a business, right?
Yeah.
And how you market yourself as an athlete versus as an artist.
No, the corporate thing is, I mean, I'm a manager at a large software company too, right? You know, so I can totally throw in that whole team dynamic in there too, you know, to throw in a third variable if that comes into play. So, but that's it's a great topic. We could probably do that for a few weeks on it.
Maybe, probably. Let's do it, right? It gives us something to talk about for the next
that's
few
a
weeks.
great suggestion. So folks that are listening then, next week, 7:30 Thursday.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And I will do my best to not get banned right before. So
it's all right. It's all good. It happens, right? Everyone likes a bad boy, right?
I didn't know. I just learned something.
Yeah.
So
all right.
Okay.
Well, we'll wrap
Thank
that
you so
up.
much.
It was awesome chatting with you, and we'll see you next Thursday night then.
Yeah, it's great
right.
chat as always.
Thanks,
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
We appreciate it.
All right. Cheers.
All right. Bye.
Bye.